He was born with a leg that would not straighten, a twist of bone and sinew that made the midwife gasp. His father took one look and walked out. His mother held him for an hour, weeping, then wrapped him in a blanket and carried him to the orphanage. She left him on the steps with a note pinned to his chest. His name is Samuel. I cannot keep him. Forgive me. The orphanage was cold, crowded, and cruel. The other children called him Crippled Sam and pushed him down the stairs. The nuns gave him the hardest chores and the smallest portions. He learned to be invisible, to stay quiet, to survive by not being noticed. But he was lonely, so lonely that some nights he prayed to die. Then Lily came. She was 6 years old, new to the orphanage, with tangled hair and eyes that sparkled like river stones. She saw him sitting alone in the corner, his twisted legs stretched out, his head down. She walked over, sat beside him, and offered him half of her bread. "Why are you sad?" she asked. No one had ever asked him that. No one had ever cared. He told her about his leg, his parents, the way the other children laughed. She listened without pity, then took his hand. "I will be your friend," she said. "I will always be your friend." That night, he did not pray to die. They were inseparable after that. She pushed his wheelchair when his leg ached, read to him when he could not sleep, and chased away the bullies with a fury that surprised everyone. He taught her to read, to count, to dream of a world beyond the orphanage walls. They were 9 and 8, and they were each other's everything. One evening, they sat on the roof of the orphanage, watching the stars. She turned to him and said, "When I grow up, I am going to marry you." He laughed, but she did not. "I mean it," she said. "I do not care about your leg. I do not care about anything. I love you." He made a promise that night, a promise he knew he might never keep. "I will find you," he said. "Wherever you go, I will find you. And I will marry you." She smiled, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "I will wait." They were 10 and 9, and they meant every word. She was adopted the next year. A wealthy family from the city came, saw her bright eyes and her gentle smile, and chose her. She begged them to take Samuel too, but they would not. They wanted a healthy daughter, not a crippled boy. She cried as they led her away. He watched from the window, unable to follow. He did not see her again for 30 years. After she left, he threw himself into learning. He read every book in the orphanage, taught himself mathematics, and discovered a talent for numbers. When he was 18, he left with nothing but a satchel and a twisted leg that made every step a battle. He started as a clerk in a general store, working for pennies, sleeping in the back room. His leg ached constantly, but he never complained. He saved every coin, studied every ledger, and learned the secrets of trade. Within 10 years, he owned the store. Within 20, he owned the entire street. He became the richest man in the territory, a legend whispered about in saloons and newspapers. They called him the Crippled King, and no one laughed anymore. He had mansions, horses, and more money than he could spend. But he had only one goal: to find Lily. He hired detectives, searched records, and traveled to cities across the country. He found no trace of her. The family that had adopted her had moved, changed their name, disappeared. He began to lose hope. He began to think she was dead, but he never stopped looking. Then one day, a letter arrived. It was from a clerk in a poorhouse, a grim building on the edge of a forgotten town. The clerk wrote that an elderly woman had been found wandering the streets, wearing a torn dress and muttering a name. The name was Samuel. He left immediately. The poorhouse was worse than any orphanage. Filthy, overcrowded, and filled with the forgotten. He walked through the rows of cots, his cane clicking on the stone floor, searching for a face he had not seen in 30 years. He found her in the back corner, curled on a thin mattress. She was thin, her hair gray, her face lined with years of suffering. But her eyes were the same, bright, sparkling, unbroken. He knelt beside her, his bad leg screaming in protest, and took her hand. "Lily," he said. She looked at him, confused at first. Then recognition flooded her face. "Samuel?" she whispered. "Is it really you?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I found you. I kept my promise." She reached up, touched his face, traced the lines that time had carved. "You are not a boy anymore," she said. He laughed, a sound that cracked with emotion. "Neither are you." He carried her out of the poorhouse, her weight light in his arms, and took her to his mansion. He gave her a room filled with sunlight, a closet full of dresses, and a garden where she could walk. She cried for 3 days, overwhelmed by a kindness she had never known. The family that adopted her had used her as a servant, then thrown her out when she grew ill. She had spent 20 years drifting, working, surviving. She had never married. She had never forgotten the boy with the twisted leg who had promised to find her. "I waited," she told him. "I always waited." They were married in the garden, under the same stars they had watched as children. She wore a white dress, and he wore a suit that hid his leg brace. The guests were the orphans from his old home, now grown, now free. When the preacher asked if he would take her to be his wife, his voice was steady. "I made this promise when I was 10 years old. I have been keeping it ever since." On the night of their first anniversary, they sat on the roof of his mansion, watching the stars. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, her hand in his. "Do you remember the orphanage?" she asked. He nodded, his eyes on the sky. "I remember a girl who shared her bread with a crippled boy. I remember a boy who promised to find me," she said. He kissed her forehead, her cheek, her lips. "I would have searched forever." They sat in silence, the city lights below them, the stars above them. Two orphans who had been told they were nothing had found each other again, and they were everything.